takes pleasure in attracting a stellar list of speakers that address today's most relevant issues. The club's place as a refuge for rich discussion and networking has never wavered after 123 seasons.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Anita McCuitt, and I'm the president of the Canadian Club Toronto and national leader for TMT and consumer markets at PwC Canada. Today, we're joined by Bharat Masrani, Group President and CEO for TD Bank Group, for a discussion on what he's observed and learned in 2020 and how it must inform the future of TD Bank and Canadian society and business. Before we dive into today's topic, here are a couple tips on how to participate with us. The click here to switch stream button is available if you find that your internet is slow. The video quality may decrease, but the audio should stay strong. And we do want your questions today. So once you click the questions tab, you can just enter your questions and they will go straight to our moderator. Thank you to today's event sponsors, EY, Canadian Bankers Association, IBM, and BGIS. We are grateful for your support of today's discussion. The Canadian Club is a nonprofit, and we've been gathering people together for 124 seasons, and we could not do that without the support of our sponsors. Now to introduce today's speaker, Bharat Masrani. He has more than 30 years of extensive banking experience and has served as Group President and CEO of TD Bank Group since November of 2014. Mr. Masrani has held senior executive roles across the bank's global footprint, including CEO of TD Waterhouse in Europe, Senior Vice President Corporate Finance and Co-Head in Europe, and Vice President and Country Head for India. He began his career with TD as a commercial banking trainee in 1987. Today, Mr. Masrani will be joined in conversation by Melanie Burns, Senior Vice President of Talent and Human Resources for TD Bank. One of the club's traditions that has not changed in this virtual world is a toast that we make at the start of every event to our country. So if you have a glass of water or anything nearby, join me in a toast to Canada. To Canada.
Canada.
Melanie, I will turn the Canadian Club podium over to you.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much. And Bharat, it's wonderful to see you in this virtual setting. I'm so looking forward to the conversation and hearing more from you about what you've learned and observed over the last year. How are you doing today?
Well, nice to see you, Melanie, as well. And Anita, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm doing well, but as you know, Melanie, and I'm really thrilled, actually, when I start off, think about it, that we are doing this virtually. It's important to connect. I wish we could do it in person. I saw the intro and on stage, and having, all those people would have been wonderful. But it is important to remain connected, and this is one way we can do that. And what can I say? I'm doing well, but the pandemic has not spared any one of us. It has really changed all our lives in many different ways. And I know, we've got the vaccines out there. Things are going to be much better. But I would not take anything for granted yet. And, we're not out of the woods yet. I do want to take this opportunity, at TD, as you know, Melanie, you're no stranger to what I'm about to say, that, it's been amazing what our people have been able to do, for our customers, for all our clients, for each other, as well as the communities in which we live and work. Because, we are a strong bank. We've been there right from the outset, and we could have not done that without the dedication of talented 90,000 TD bankers around the world. So I do want to take this opportunity. I know some of them are listening in or watching in, to thank them for really delivering for all our customers, for each other, as well as for the community. So that's great to see. And last point I'll make before I open it up to take your questions is that, listen, we are in a crisis. This is one for the ages. There's no denying that not many people are around who say, well, I could foresee this. But I do want to say one thing. All crises have one thing in common. All of them end. This too shall end. And all of us are looking forward to that day. And frankly, we are closer to that day today than we were 90 days ago, thanks to the vaccine. So let's all look forward to it and think more positively as to what the future holds for us.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, Bharat, because during this crisis, there are some days where it really doesn't feel like it's going to end, but that's a very good reminder for all of us. I feel that this crisis is really unique in so many ways. And as we rebuild, what are the things that are most on your mind? And what do you believe the role is that the private sector, including TD, needs to play in the recovery?
Well, what can I say about the crisis? It has changed. It has changed how we communicate, how we connect. The impact has been profound. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. I don't think, anyone can say that we've lived through a time where it is illegal to go outside your own home. It's illegal to go to work because we were, for the most part, over the last 1 year in a lockdown. And it has touched us all. I mean, regardless of age, regardless of, where you might be in your life, regardless of, what education you might have. So it has certainly been profound. And when I think about the one sector that has really, really suffered badly here is the small business. You look at the small business segment and what that has, this crisis has been so devastating for that segment, particularly the ones who are in the, call it the restaurant business, hospitality business, they've just been devastated. So, and millions are still out of work. I mean, let's not forget, we can say it's been a year, but millions of people are still out of work. And so I'd say, the impact has been huge. And when I think about, when you kind of be a little granular, the impact also has been disproportionate. It has really impacted folks in our community who were disadvantaged to start with. The new immigrant community, it's been harder on them. If you look at the indigenous communities, and last summer we saw, the amount of racism against the Black community, and it's been just just amazing how bad this pandemic has been. And when I think about women, the impact on women has been disproportionate as well. So these are impacts that should not be underestimated and we should not just say we're going to wish them away. I think we need to all our stakeholders need to work together. That is governments, private sector companies, the communities, all of us need to work together and say, what are we going to do? Because as a private sector and corporations have a responsibility. We can only be as good as the customers we serve, the countries in which we operate. So it is important that we be part of the solution. And when I think about, the best way I can answer you is, what in companies at TD and other companies, we talk about ESG, the environmental impact of what happens in society, the social impact, and of course the governance around it. So on the social side, all companies need to step up. At TD, I'm very proud as to what we do. Diversity and inclusion, for example, has been part of our tradition, part of our culture. It's, I view that as a secret sauce and a competitive advantage. But we also know that, when we talk about the Black community, that more needs to be done. More needs to be done. And at TD, you've seen it. You've been very much part of the discussion. We went out publicly to announce, further representation goals. And we no longer is it adequate to say that we'll be inclusive. We need to be anti-racist, and it's important that we play that role. I think when I think about, what we are doing for other communities to the TD Ready Challenge, the TD Ready commitment, as to what we've done in our philanthropy, in our giving, again, I think it has to play an important role going forward, and how this matters to us on financial security, on better health outcomes, a vibrant planet, connected communities, which is very much part of what we do. And then finally, I will talk a bit about the environment. As you know, Melanie, we recently announced our climate action plan. We're targeting to be net zero, including in our financing activities by 2050, which is in accordance with the Paris Agreement. So feel very proud. I think it is important to realize that, climate change is real. Our view is that, we will certainly need to play an important role as we move to a low carbon economy. But our view is that we need to be balanced. As we move towards that world, we need to recognize there's a transition, and through that transition, we need to support responsible energy development. Because, we cannot get to a low carbon world by flicking a switch. So I think, when I think about, private sectors, governments, other entities, other participants in the economy need to work together to create a better Canada and a better future for all of us.
It's great to hear your comments around climate change, and I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into that, particularly its impact on society, on the economy, and on the bank. How is TD thinking about this challenge now?
On climate, as I just said, very proud as to we've had a tradition at the bank to be environmentally sort of focused as to what we've done over many, many years. I feel very proud that, I think we are the only North American bank now on the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index. So we feel very proud as to the tradition at TD. But, as we know, climate change is a real issue. It needs to be tackled. And as I said earlier, I think we need a balanced approach. So on the climate action plan that TD has announced, once again, to be net zero by 2050. And I'm so glad other financial institutions are taking the position that that's the way to go. And frankly, on that, just by saying that we are going to be working just on our own is not good enough. I think we need to be catalysts for change here. So what we have done at TD, and I'm sure other companies will think of creative ideas to have similar outcomes, is that we've created a center of excellence, for example, on this, and where we are making the investments, being part of the innovative solutions here, finding, new ways and identifying new approaches that might help us. We're collaborating internationally with lots of organizations to see what metrics should we be following? Because, 2050 is 30 years away. In the meantime, how do we ensure that we are making, more than enough progress in this important regard? So that's very important. We've also created a group within TD Securities to help our clients, work through a transition. What advice can we provide? What help can we provide as a bank to make sure that our clients are moving towards the same goal as well. So I think, this is an area where, we need to be as a part of the solution. I think this is good for society, and hence it is good for TD and good for business. So that's how I'm looking at it. This is a new economy that is going to be created here as we move towards that. And if businesses become part of the solution, then my view is that it opens up even more opportunities for a better future. So that's what I'm thinking about, Melanie, here. And I think it is important that, we continue this dialogue. I know there are lots of stakeholders on today's call, that have views on this. I encourage to have a discussion, and let's all come up with great ways to get to a world that all of us know is important for Canada and frankly the whole world. And so I'm looking forward to that discussion and the continued dialogue among all our stakeholders.
Excellent. Bharat, you started off the call by acknowledging that here we are in a virtual environment, and we know that we have lots of conversations at TD about how COVID has accelerated digital adoption so significantly. We've all shifted how we work, how we shop, how we engage, how we bank. What's your view about the wider implications of this change on the economy?
Well, it certainly has been a change. Again, I'm trying to find other data points than just our bank. But when I look at digital adoption within TD, we've had million new enrollments on our digital property through the pandemic. The engagement, the level of take up, the level of interactions, that is done digitally. And I think that is an indication of what's happening in the wider society. I mean, nobody can meet as freely now. We are all connecting virtually. We are all transacting virtually. And frankly, a lot of good has come out of it when I think, how quickly TD and other companies were able to adapt to this new reality and make sure that the economy continues to function, that services continue to be provided. Financial services is viewed as an essential service, and feel very proud as to how the banking industry generally was able to adapt to this new reality and provide those digital capabilities, for customers to connect. And you've seen, how all of us are operating, how we shop, how we call each other, how we connect with each other. And there have been great examples of terrific innovation that has come forward. I'm thinking of Canadian innovation, with Shopify, the likes of Shopify, as to what they've been able to do. And I wouldn't say that this embracing of this world is just by big companies. Small companies have found innovative ways digitally to connect and to make sure that they are, contributing to the well-being of the economy and continuing their businesses. So I think this is in a way, I don't want to say there's any silver lining out of this pandemic. It's so tragic. It's impacted so many families. People have died, loved ones have disappeared. Hospitalization has been terrible. But as is usual, you see an acceleration of digitization that people were talking about. What was expected over 10 years, 12 years has happened in a matter of months. So when I think, when people ask me at TD, does that mean that, you don't need your physical locations anymore? I said, no, absolutely not. I don't expect day-to-day transactions that are now moved on to our digital platforms to come back in any meaningful way. But we also found, and I think this is something to keep in mind for everybody on this call, that human interactions are important, that human beings are social animals. We're finding right in the height of the pandemic, tens of thousands of virtual appointments made. Virtual appointments were made virtually, but people were coming to our locations because they needed to interact with a human being. They needed advice. They wanted to make sure they feel confident about their financial future. So what that has shown us is that, what we may do in our physical locations, it be more advice-based. It's for more complex kind of transactions or interactions. But that may change, what we do there, how we do it in our physical locations, may be different. But I am convinced that, we believe in this omni-channel world, where the physical and the virtual is important for our customers. And in fact, through this pandemic, that has become even more important for our customers and frankly for the bank as well, because our own people need to connect with our own customers. It is a relationship business. So yes, a lot of great things has happened because of the technologies and all that, but I don't think that the human connections have disappeared or replaced completely.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think a lot of those same comments can be made in relation to our colleagues and our employees too, right, Bharat? The human connection that has been missed by so many of us working from home and being isolated or separated from each other. I'm getting pinged a lot of texts, Bharat, of questions from the audience, and so I know that there's a lot more that people want to hear from you. And so far, the conversation has been a perfect layup and great to hear from you. Before I turn it to the audience, though, and start asking you those questions, I just want to ask one more, if I can. What do you see as the path forward as you're looking ahead to 2021? What are the things that you would touch on?
Wow, that is, I could take the rest of the time talking about that, Melanie, but you're telling me that a lot of texts and people want to, ask other questions, so I'll be mindful of that. What can I say? Simply, to do well by doing good. And that's the way we should think about the future, If everybody does well, we'll do well by doing good. And like it's in a bank, many times people ask me, we lend money. No. That's not what we do. Of course we lend money, but we lend money so people can meet their aspirations to buy a home or save money for the kids' college education or whatever the case might be. We don't offer mutual funds. We help people save for their future. So I think this thing about what I do. We talked a bit about it on the ESG, the social side of it, and we must keep in mind that that at least for banking, I say we have a higher calling. This is not just about financially performing well, but what are we doing for our communities? What are we doing for each other? And that matters. And we've had a bit of a discussion on that. And I know, it's easy that we focus on, the metrics, and I know I'll have a quarter end and, what's our EPS and all that. But I think it is also important to keep in mind, and I think this pandemic has really underscored the importance of the holistic, good. Good for the whole economy. In Canada, we have tremendous amount of advantages. I did a media interview a couple of days ago, and I said, yes, when I think about Canada, how should we, think about going forward? Well, top priority for governments, I think, has got to be that let's make sure that vaccine manufacturing is available locally. Let's make sure that the masks and the gloves that are required, God forbid, but if we ever get into another pandemic, that we have local supply for it, so we avoid the problems we saw in the last few months. Secondly, can we find ways, to make sure that when we get off this pandemic, that all the savings that has been accumulated, people have not been able to spend, there's pent-up demand there. Is there a way to make sure that those monies, at least most of it gets spent in Canada? Because that's important for our economy. And the other big important part here is we talked about climate change. Melanie, you asked me a couple of questions on that. We know that is the future. We know that is where the world's going, and for the right reasons. It's important that we get to the low carbon economy. And so what are the industries that are going to be thriving in that world? What about, the digitization, technology, climate change? This is going to create so many opportunities. And when I think about Canada, we have a really well-educated, workforce. We have a very developed economy. We have a population that is, wanting to do the right thing. And so we've got everything, the ingredients to really make this happen. And our job is to make sure, how do we bring this together and point it towards the right opportunities that is going to emerge here? So I feel very, very optimistic as to what the future holds. I know the pandemic has been tragic, it's been terrible, but I think it has also, highlighted the advantages of Canada. Here we are nearly a year into it, and we're looking at getting out of it. And our economy, yes, we've had lots of issues, but, generally has done well from a global perspective. And there's a, pent-up confidence and demand that needs to be unleashed. And I'm confident that it will be as we get this vaccination program, underway more at scale, which I think is happening already.
Fantastic. Bharat, I'm going to turn it over to questions from the audience. As I mentioned, I'm being sent a whole bunch of excellent. I'm only worried that we're only here for another half an hour, given the volume of questions that are coming in. The first one I'm going to ask you, though, you're going to think is a bit of a plant, and I want to assure you that it is not. But it is about career growth and development in the present context. And just what would your advice be?
It's such a great question, actually, and I don't want to call it a layup because it's an important question. Like when I think of my own career at TD and all that, finding those personal connections, finding mentors, either positive or negative, meeting a lot of people, customers and colleagues and bosses was a critical part of career management. And in the virtual world, that's different. It's difficult, and so but I would say it is important to connect, and I'm encouraging my teams all the time. Like not to talk about myself here, but I must have connected virtually in the last 1 year with tens of thousands of TD bankers in events like these. Taking questions, the topical issues about the economy, about health and safety. And it's important to create those special connections. So I would encourage people that from a career management perspective, just because we are might be under a lockdown, don't give up. And the other part I would say is that I talked your last question, Melanie, as to what the future holds. My view, you can have your own view and make sure that whatever you, and there's different ways this is going to sort of evolve, is that you are getting the right skills and the capabilities. They, like major companies like TD have terrific programs. At the bank we have, Melanie, you're in charge of it, TD Thrive, which is a terrific program of learning and development and how people can acquire those skills. But don't underestimate the importance of human connections and personal connections, even in the virtual world. And there are ways to do that. There are so many platforms out there. I didn't even know such platforms existed. I've learned, and they are very effective, and they really do work.
Terrific. I have a question here about vaccinations, Bharat. And so do you believe that corporations like TD can play a role in encouraging Canadians to make the choice to vaccinate themselves when available?
I mean, Melanie, when it's my turn, when I get the nod, I'm taking it. I think it's just amazing. It's a marvel of science as to what has happened, that an effective, safe vaccine was developed in a matter of months that would normally take years. And as we've seen in other countries, the vaccination programs, once they get up to scale, you've seen that in Israel, you've seen that to some extent in the UK, and even in the US, you're starting to see it because they've been able to scale it up quite dramatically, that the impact is meaningful. So my encouragement to whomever I know, including our folks at the bank and our clients and all that, would be to encourage folks. But obviously, these are personal choices people have to make themselves. I think as a bank, health and safety of our customers and of our people is our top priority. That's our guiding principle number one. I should have talked about that as to how we managed through the pandemic. And that's been our guiding principle. So if all of us are going to get to this magic world of herd immunity, enough of us will need to be vaccinated. So as a bank with our voice in the community, in the economy, would be to encourage people to get vaccinated. It's a sure way to end this pandemic, because any other way is, at least based on what all of us have read now and become experts, is a tragic way to get there. So this is the best way, and that would be my encouragement. And whatever we can do as a bank, we are in discussions with various government agencies as to what can we as a bank can do here. We're playing an important role in saying, how can we have mass testing of our own people? And is there a way to scale it up because of the way the bank is configured and we are national in scope? And even on the vaccinations, is there some ways, as a bank, we can play a role either through data management or finding, contact tracing or finding people who should be vaccinated based on their priorities. So we are prepared to play, whatever role where we can bring value. But I think it is important to get the vaccines out in order for us to escape this misery that all of us have been living in the last 1 year or so.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Bharat, you talked about the culture at TD and referred to it as a special sauce. And I know, having been at TD for as long as I have been, just how important our culture is to you and to the executive team at the bank. Do you, or is there any difference that you feel that our culture has shifted in any way from pre-COVID to 2021 now? Is there anything that you notice that is different?
It certainly is special, but it is also a secret, Melanie, our culture, we are, and I've said this many times before, we are a bank, we don't make cars, we don't make computers. We are in the business of meeting people's aspirations. If they want to buy a home, if they want to save, for their children's education. And that's the business we are in. And how we deliver that personalized, connected, legendary experience to millions of our customers is how we succeed. And that's done through our people. So our people are our greatest asset. That's the way I think about it. And culture matters so much. And we cannot be the wow bank or the one that provides legendary experiences if it wasn't for that strong culture. So the way I think about the bank's culture, it has been, will continue to be, and it is a core strength of the bank. But that doesn't mean that the culture remains static. As we have more, people join the bank, if we acquire companies, we're not an ideological company. We adapt to the environment. We make sure that, we adapt and we adapt effectively rather than praying, hoping, wishing that we go back to the good old days. So as our customers, needs are evolving, we are adapting to this new reality. If they want to deal with us in a particular way, we will make sure we adapt. And our culture is so customer centric, because we look at the bank from a customer in rather than from the bank out. And every TD banker, will be proud to say that's what we do. So, we are a culture that believes in a purpose. We are a purpose-driven company. We believe in shared commitments that 90,000 people sort of live and breathe every day, and that makes us so unique. So I don't see any fundamental change there, except that the environment is changing, and we will adapt to that new reality, whether it is digitization, whether it is different way of connecting, whether it's new products that will emerge, because of the pandemic. We will certainly adapt, but the core part of what we are, a customer-centric, providing those personalized, connected, legendary experiences, is not going to change.
Super. There's a question here around how we are thinking about security in a cyber context, considering the rising incidence of cyber attacks. What are your thoughts?
Many people, because I'm a banker, they are, one classic question I get, I haven't gotten one yet, but I guess this is the close one, is, what keeps me up at night? Mm-hmm. And cyber certainly, comes to mind. I mean, it is, how can you quantify? It's one of those tail events, and how do you define a tail event? Low probability of it happening because of all the stuff we're doing, but if it does happen, then the impact can be quite large. So cyber, I worry about it. I think this is a huge threat, but I feel that, again, TD, and I think I can talk generally for banks in Canada, pay a huge amount of attention to this. I think, major corporations are as well, and governments are. And I would say there is a lot more cooperation between, the private sector and governments and law enforcement and vendors that play a huge role in providing services, a lot more cooperation today than it might have been a year ago, 2 years ago, or even 3 years ago, to make sure that we do provide a safe environment for people to do their banking or any type of transaction. So I think we are much better today than we were as a country many years ago. But let's not forget that cyber criminals don't take the year off because we had a pandemic. They don't take time off. In fact, they have more time working from home as to how they can harm. So we need to be on guard on this one. At the bank, our cost to protect our platforms has gone up exponentially. The type of talent that we hire now at TD is a lot different specifically in that area. And you know that, Melanie, you're very much part of it. So it takes a holistic solution to actually protect against cyber. But I would say this is it's going to be an ongoing watching brief, I guess that's the right phrase, because the cyber criminals are becoming more creative, and we need to make sure that we remain vigilant to make sure that we are protecting our customers' data, the bank's properties, and what it means for any major economy. So I'm glad to see the cooperation and the level of engagement on this very important issue.
Yeah. Bharat, there's a great question here about how the pandemic changed engagement with our customers. And so what were some of the lessons learned around what worked well, what didn't work well? What would your comments be?
So let me just add one more point on the cyber side. Apart from, and I know we probably have a lot of clients and customers as well, I think all of us also need to think about what I would call a cyber hygiene on a personal level. And at the bank, we put in a lot of effort to ensure that we are not a victim of a phishing attack, that somebody doesn't inadvertently click on something they shouldn't, and the minute they click on something, then the malware gets promoted in the environment, et cetera, et cetera. So I would also say that apart from cooperation between large corporations, small companies, governments, law enforcement, big suppliers, there's also, I would highlight, important for personal responsibility on this, to make sure that we guard our own data, preciously, and not actually flippantly give away our passwords and all that. I just wanted to add that. And Melanie, you'll have to repeat your question.
No, that was an important add. So thanks for that, Bharat. How did the pandemic change engagement with the customers, and what did we learn? What did we do well? What might we have done differently?
My colleagues, I'm sure will not appreciate of talking about, my own bank, but I think it gives you a good sense for it. What we learned very quickly at the outset, we are a major bank, we've got more than 26 million customers globally. We are an omni bank, so we've got lots of channels in which our customers can connect. But what we learned also is that our customers, particularly in the beginning when we were in a major lockdown, wanted to have a human interaction with the bank and with anybody. So we were, on the one hand, trying to manage call centers because of, the pandemic, and how do you get call center staff and agents to work from home, not an easy task. All institutions struggled, for a few days on that. Thankfully, at TD, we were able to, stand up capabilities, very quickly, where most of our people were able to take calls from their homes. But we found that, many people were calling us not because they wanted to do some banking transaction, but they just wanted to talk to a human being and interact and find out, are they going to be okay or not, et cetera. So I think, one big lesson here is when we talk about engagement, is the human interaction, that this is not just a transactional relationship. This is actually a relationship, and how important it is to nurture it. So I think that's one big thing I picked up. And obviously the obvious things of, the importance of digitization, the importance of technology. But, to me, when we say we want to provide those personalized, connected, legendary experiences, it's what happens in that moment. How are you ensuring that although we might have 26, 27 million customers, that when I am interacting with the bank, that 90,000 TD bankers are actually thinking about me, about my issue, and how do we create that experience? I think that's a big takeaway here, and I am so thrilled as to how our own colleagues, Melanie, performed in that regard. This is all about the customer. This is, thinking like a customer, and how do we find solutions? So, the other big takeaway for me is the innovation, the ingenuity, in the economy. I talked about science, what happened in the vaccine world, but even in the financial services business, at least from a TD perspective, I mean, the level of innovation, the level of, making things happen, and looking after all of our stakeholders. This was not like cutting corners in any way. And like when I think about as a bank, how we work with governments to make sure that Canadians were getting the payments and the support, that small businesses were well supported, that, we were there to provide credit in the darkest time of this pandemic, that we had the strength of balance sheet and capital, to perform our function in the economy. So nothing new here, but it's one of those things, a cold shower moment, right? You can prepare as much as you want for a cold shower. It's going to feel a lot different, and you're going to know, how you perform once you're under the shower. So I think, lots of sort of basic learnings, but they were just got reinforced through this pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Bharat, there are a couple of questions that have come in around diversity and inclusion, and I know that is something that is such an important area for you and has been for many, many, many years. So I'm going to try and put them together into one. Maybe given the events of the past year, what specifically would you call out that TD is doing to alter the way we think about diversity and inclusion in the long term?
And so like again, diversity and inclusion has been very much part of our DNA. This started about 20 years ago in the bank. I remember, heading up, I think I was one of the first ones, or second one maybe, to head up a diversity leadership council at the bank, and we've had different areas of focus. And I think I've done, a good job, a reasonable job. I've always said, diversity and inclusion is not only the right moral thing to do, but it's the right business proposition. If we don't, if we don't look like the communities we serve, then we are not going to be as successful. There's a war for talent. How can you go out there and say, well, I'm not going to hire women, or I'm not going to hire somebody of color, and by the time you add up everybody you're not going to hire, then how are you going to get the talent you really need? So, we've always believed the right moral thing to do and the right business proposition. But I think what we saw through this pandemic, the riots we saw, the level of sort of anti-Black racism, all of us saw horrific, scenes on TV and all that. And what it just reinforces is that there is a lot more to do. That we should not declare victory at all. I've said, I've been very public about it, that at TD, we can do more and we will do more. Melanie, you were very much part of the group. We said our representation from the Black community at the executive level will double by 2022, and visible minority representation will increase, by 2025 by 50% at the executive level. So, and I've said, we're going to hold ourselves accountable by putting numbers out every year as to what kind of progress we are making, through the ready commitment as well. How do we support, Black organizations, I know that want to make sure that, we get to a better future here. And I can feel very proud as to how TD has contributed there. So I give you those examples, but I think, we as companies, corporations, all the stakeholders in Canada, need to come together on this, because this is such an important issue. As a country, we cannot thrive if everybody doesn't have the opportunity. And the pandemic has shown that. Pandemic has shown the disproportionate, impact on various parts of our society. And unless we start believing, yes, growth is good, but inclusive growth is even more excellent. And that's the way to think about this. And so I think, yes, I feel, very proud of where TD has come from, but we need to do more, and we will do more. And I'd encourage, all corporations on today's call and more widely, say, okay, we need to be part of the solution here and get to a more inclusive growth future.
Excellent. Bharat, here's a question that's more about you and your own lockdown behaviors. Are there any rituals that you took on in a work from home environment? One question is asking if you got a pet during lockdown. I can tell you I have a cat. If you're interested in having it, I'd be happy to pass it on to you. But what's your favorite Netflix show? So what were some of the things that you did during lockdown that were rituals for you?
I don't want to call anything a ritual, but life changed quite dramatically. And I know, frankly, I'm so fortunate that, we were able to, as a bank, connect with each other, and we did that. I think from a personal perspective, I wasn't a big walker, and one thing I learned is, hey, you're gonna go crazy unless you go out. Was to start taking long walks. That became a big ritual. And let's put it this way: I caught up on a lot of reading. A lot of novels, business books that I used to get from people. I caught up on that. And the other part that which was interesting is people I normally in my normal day-to-day living, pre-pandemic, I wouldn't have thought of being in touch with. Relatives overseas, friends that I'd not met. I found a way to connect, which again became a good thing, actually. And found new ways of making those connections, having virtual dinners, sometimes having a virtual drink. So that's how, my life evolved, and picked up, one of my passion is, I love the sport cricket. And so, and folks who know cricket can be a longish game sometimes. And so, and I did find the right channels where I could get it. And so I was able to catch up on all the cricket matches that I've missed. And by the way, these were all, replays, because they nowhere in the world they were playing cricket. But at least I caught up on some very interesting games that were always on my to-do list. So, but the last point I'd make on that, Melanie, is that, what I enjoyed and loved about, and I guess that's too strong a word, because we were in a tragic, or are still in a tragic, environment, is what our people did for each other. And it was amazing to connect and to learn so much from each other. And it was a great way to become a team.
Absolutely. So I didn't hear anything about Netflix in there, so I assume it's not your thing, and I'll take it as a hard no on the offer from my cat. Last question, Bharat, that I'm going to squeeze in before I think we'll be turning it over. What are your greatest hopes for 2021 and 2022?
we are much better today than we were 30, 60, 90 days ago. The vaccines are there, and I know there's been, a lot of discussion on, hey, can we get this out faster? Any major program is going to have, some issues around there, but they're out there now. My expectation is that, they'll be rolling out, even more at scale than what we've seen. So I'm really looking forward to a world which is, more normal than what we've been used to. But it's a world that's going to be different. I don't think the memory of the pandemic is going to fade. I don't think some of the trends we've seen that have been accelerated are going to reverse out. But, as I mentioned earlier, human beings are social animals. I expect life to get back to some form of normalcy. And I think it'd be good. We human beings need each other. And I think from an economy perspective, again, I think governments in various parts where we operate at TD, have done a remarkable job, to keep the health and safety as priority one, but also to provide support to make sure these economies are not damaged, on a permanent basis. So my expectation would be that, that'll be a robust sort of bounce back, as we come back. So my hope here is that, and I know I'm going to be right on this, that yes, we shall get out, we will get out of this pandemic. It's in a matter of months, and the economy should come back well. And a lot of the innovations we've seen will be there for many years to come, and that'll make us all better. And I'm looking forward to Melanie meeting you and your colleagues and everybody on this call as well. That'd be a terrific day, the day we can do that.
That's wonderful, Bharat. Thank you so much for this great conversation. Thank you for allowing me to be part of it with you. It's been wonderful today. I'm now going to turn it over to Troy to close out our segment. So thanks very much.
Great.
Thank you very much, Melanie.
Great, and thank you as well, Melanie. Hi, all. My name is Troy Butner. I'm a partner with EY that's fortunate enough to work with Bharat and his team at TD Bank. And I'm happy to be here today on behalf of EY, who is one of the proud sponsors of what is really a great event. And I'd like to thank you, Melanie and Bharat, on behalf of all the attendees today for really a terrific discussion on an unprecedented time. And I think, Bharat, the way that you frame the impact of the pandemic, both the challenges that it's created and certainly disproportionately for some, unfortunately, but also the opportunities it's presented and the things we've learned is very much aligned with how EY has seen our clients interpret and respond in this really unprecedented situation. At EY, we're seeing tremendous opportunities and focus on many of the topics you raised, ESG and sustainable finance, and how do we help climate, certainly diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what we've seen there, and the work that still needs to be done. Digitization, as you alluded to, and how do organizations meet the needs of their customers in this newer environment, including, you mentioned cybersecurity and the importance of that. We see a lot of that, and then finally the workplace of the future, and what. And Melanie, I'm sure you're very focused on that, as I know. What is it going to be like to have those connections that Bharat referred to and are so important? So, as auditors of TD Bank, our team is able to see how the 90,000 TD bankers do this and are focused on these topics, and hopefully we'll come out of this pandemic in a better place. And I think, Bharat, you opened with all crises end. So let's hope this crisis ends soon and we can get back to normal and to meeting in this venue in person. So thanks again for the comments and the opportunity. And I think I'll turn over to Scott to finish with a few housekeeping details.
Thanks very much, Troy. I'm one of the 90,000 bankers, but I'm also a director of the Canadian Club. Thanks to Bharat and Melanie as well for today's excellent conversation. Guests, we hope you'll join us for some of our upcoming events. Later this week, on Thursday, March 4th, we celebrate International Women's Day. Join us to hear from a group of incredible women who have been the first in their fields and hear what needs to be done to ensure that they are the first of many. With the postponement of March break here in Ontario, the Canadian Club has programmed a full month of rich discussions, including trends in healthcare, critical minerals, board governance, and an all-star CEO panel you won't want to miss. Thanks to our AV supplier, Van Valkenburg Communications, and livemeeting.ca for making it possible for us to come together virtually today. And of course, thank you to our sponsors, the Canadian Bankers Association, EY, IBM, and BGIS for sponsoring today's event. Our events would literally not be possible without our sponsors. So again, thank you for your continued generosity and support. And of course, guests, thank you very much for joining us. Please stay healthy and safe.